Welcome everybody to the 2016 World's Most Ethical Company Honorary Dinner. So this is Ethisphere's 10th anniversary. Congratulations everybody for being recognized as a 2016 World's Most Ethical Company. So congratulations. This is a really important night for you all, and so it's incredibly important and profound for us. So I've been thinking a lot about what to say to you guys and what the goals of the evening would be. So I've been thinking about where we go, and then of course that says, where have we been? So I was on a long hike. I live in Scottsdale, Arizona. I was a long hike in the desert last week, because there's nobody there. It was beautiful. And the best thing happened to me. I saw not one roadrunner, but two roadrunners. So a roadrunner is exceptionally good luck. Two roadrunners is amazingly good luck. So I figured I needed to share some thoughts with you all from a great philosopher, a very wise person. So I'm going to actually read something. I've got the words also for you. But this is a book called Oh, the Places You'll Go. Theodore Geisel. And sort of need glasses a little bit. It says, you will come to a place where the streets are not marked. Some windows are lighted, but mostly they're darked. A place you could sprain both your elbow and chin. Do you dare to stay out? Do you dare to go in? How much can you lose and how much can you win? That will make sense in a couple minutes. But I hope you like that. So take a look at the world right now. We did a program a couple weeks ago that was hosted at GE, and their general counsel, Alex Dimitrioff, came out and talked to us about really the world. And one of the things he said is, so there was a hiccup last night with the currency in China. And the Dow is down. The Dow is down 400 points. A while ago, that might have taken months or years to feel that kind of effect. Now it's instantaneous, and that's not going away. So I said, mostly darked, right? This feels a little bit like mostly dark. There's geopolitical unrest. Look at some of the headlines we see out there. One of the interesting things we think about is what's the most dangerous place. Most of the companies here are global companies. What's the most dangerous place for a global company to do business? What's the most dangerous country? Does anybody want to take a guess at the most for a company to do business? Anybody want to take a guess? Russia, China. There's been $150 billion in fines levied in the United States for banks in the past few years. So America is a dangerous place to do business. So this feels a little mostly darked. But of course, I'm not going to talk this evening about mostly darked. My goals tonight are threefold. One, I really want you to celebrate. You know, very, very few times in a career do you really get to take a breath and just say, we did well. Tonight's where you look around the community, you look around your peers and colleagues and say, we did well, so congratulations. I want you to celebrate. I do want you to be inspired, because there's a purpose element to the success of companies. If you're going to be a company that's going to be here in 50 years or 100 years or 150 years, as many of you already had, purpose is critical. And in the next slide, I think you're going to not feel mostly dark, but you're going to feel mostly light. Okay? And I'll continue with the Seuss metaphor. But anyway, so I want to celebrate, I want to inspire, and oh, the places that we'll go. Oh, the places that we at Ethisphere get to go. I'm going to actually take you inside a bathroom that I was in a couple of slides. Not kidding. You'll see. Oh, the places we'll go. I want to share what we've learned from you. I want to share what we've learned from you, and I hope that you can use this information to be the company that's here in another 50 years and 150 years and longer. So this is mostly light. So carbon, environment, water, climate, transparency, diversity, responsible sources. Does anybody have a view of what they have in common? They might back there. Here's what they have in common. This is how the investor community is looking at companies, whether or not they're going to invest. There are funds that deal only with carbon. There are funds that deal with how you handle environment. There are funds that deal with climate change, right? And there's some other data points that there's something called the Principles of Responsible Investing, or PRI. There's over 59 trillion in assets in that. Just this last year, it's the fastest growing investment category. There's been $6 trillion. $6 trillion dedicated to responsible investing, right? So that's a light, right? It's not just ROI or ROE or profits. It's how you do business. There's some other interesting data points. A fascinating organization called Ravel Research did a survey of buy-side investment managers and said, what are the top 5 characteristics you look for in a company, whether or not you're going to put money into it, and also why do you sell? The number 1 criteria was management credibility. The number 4 was corporate governance, right? 65% of institutional money managers have sold a stock because they had concerns about corporate governance, right? This isn't going away. This is a beacon. This is a light, right? And it's very exciting. On the other slide, I had something about human rights issues going around the world. I talked last year about how it's up to companies to sort of behave because countries aren't going to do it. So there's some interesting things going on there. So there's conflict minerals. You know, a few years ago, the SEC said, hey, we want you to take a leadership role because these countries can't on how you source products, right? So it's going to be up to the companies. And now it's human rights in the supply chain. And they're not saying governments are going to legislate it around the world because they can't. What they are saying is you're going to do it. You guys are that light. You guys are going to make the world a better place by your action. And to me, that is incredibly powerful. It's also really inspiring. So, you know, I think about some of the things that we've had happen in the past year. So CH2M Hill is here, and they do a lot of work around human rights in the supply chain, right? They're an engineering construction company that builds stuff around the world. Parsons is another engineering construction company, and they're taking us to the Middle East. So we'll do our first program this year in the Middle East because they said there's an integrity conversation that needs to happen there. We can't just take blinders, and we need to make a difference. And you'll hear tonight from Ambassador Cameron Munter, who was the ambassador to Pakistan during the bin Laden raid, and then Afghanistan before that. So talk about a guy who's had a tough gig, and now he runs something called the East-West Institute, which thinks about solving complex problems through collaboration. Isn't that what you guys do every day, right? Isn't that why you're going to be here for the next 50 years to 100 years? So this is why this is like, I don't feel mostly dark. I feel light. I feel light when I see things like this. I told you I was going to take you into a bathroom with me. Here you go. So, the places we'll go. So because of the world's most ethical companies, because of the work you do, we get invited amazing places. This is Bobby and Ethel Kennedy's very small downstairs bathroom in Hyannisport. So the RFK Center for Law and Human Rights puts on a conference every year, 2-day conference around impact investing, and they asked me to speak, and they asked me to speak on what we look for when we rate the world's most ethical companies. So the people in this room, there are about 100 people in this room, they represented $7 trillion of investment capital. It was George Soros' family office, $80 billion. It was CalPERS and CalSTRS. And so I couldn't believe it. As an American and as a citizen of the world, I got to go to the Kennedy compound, right? And so this was their bathroom. And there was only one small bathroom in the house, and there was a lot of people waiting. And Kerry Kennedy said, don't stay in there a long time because there's a lot of people waiting. But these are the pictures on the wall. Isn't this neat? I'm so glad that you were there with me. I really am, because if it's not you, this doesn't happen, right? So I hope you feel good about that. I hope you feel inspired about it. And it was amazing. We had dinner at Bobby and Ethel Kennedy's one night, and then we had a clam bake at Jackie's and JFK's house, and then afterwards Ted Kennedy Jr. said, anybody want to hear some stories? Let's fill up a glass of wine and we'll walk over to Rose's and Joe's. And they told stories for a couple hours. How neat. We were there because you were there. And that's something. So there's other things we get to learn. About a month ago, or maybe 3 months ago now, we held a leadership luncheon in Chicago. Jones Lang LaSalle, I think Mark Oranger and his team are here. Northern Trust, Arthur J. Gallagher, and a couple other companies said, let's bring together a conversation, and then we're going to have our board members join this conversation. I didn't find out I was speaking till about 2 days before that, so I wasn't very happy about that. But I said, let's not make it into a program. Let's just listen to each of these individual folks' stories and see what we can learn from them. So I'm going to tell you a couple things that we learned from this. So first off, the guy on the right is called Darryl Hartley Leonard. He came over to America at age 18 as an English immigrant and got a job in LA as a night desk clerk for a Hyatt. Ended up being chairman and CEO, Mark, for Hyatt for 15 or 20 years. So the second day on his job as CEO of Hyatt, these guys on the left are the Hallmark family. They've been around for a long time. They owned a hotel, a Hyatt hotel in Kansas City, and it fell down. For those of you who've been around a while, you might remember that, and 100 people or more lost their lives. And so this is Darryl Hartley Leonard's second day on the job as CEO. He flies into Kansas City. He goes to Don Hall's house. Don Hall and his wife and his family, it's 1 in the morning, they all have tears in their eyes. And he said, this is not a Hyatt problem. I own the hotel. We're not going to lawyer up. We're not going to PR up. We're going to take responsibility. We own it. We're going to own up to it. We're going to worry about those families, and we're going to do what's right. Okay? 10 years later, when Darryl Hartley Leonard was CEO of Hyatt, there was a salmonella breakout with some eggs in the Hyatt in Chicago. About 1,000 people got pretty sick. He pulled everyone together and said, we are not going to lawyer up. We're not going to PR up. We are going to take responsibility. We're not going to say it's the egg manufacturer. We own it. All right? Why is this important? Because the question I ask these guys as board members is simply, how do you measure the moral compass of an organization? How do you measure it? How do you know, right? And how do you teach it? So next, Marty Nesbitt on the left, who's on the board of JLL and American Airlines, Norfolk Southern, and something else I can't remember. But anyway, he founded something called the parking spot. Most of the people here probably travel a good amount, and they've used a parking spot. And he said there was a racially charged shooting at one of his facilities. And Penny Pritzker, was current Secretary of Commerce, was their primary investor. He started the company. She bankrolled it. So what do? You immediately focus on the families. You take responsibility. You do what's right. And the story goes, nobody quit after that racially, and people were okay. Right? He knew what to do was right, and that sets the organizational compass of an organization. Is when challenges happen, you do the right thing. You never let a crisis or a situation go by without doing the right thing. The third one on the left is Sherry Barat. She's on the board of, I think, 3 WME companies, maybe 4, Arthur J. Gallagher, next to Era Energy, Prudential Financial Funds, and one other I can't remember. I said, what's your story? She said, well, I was a single mom in the 50s with no education, and I ended up getting a good mentor and ended up rising pretty high in Northern Trust and other places, and now she's on 3 boards. I said, how do you measure the moral compass of an organization? How do you know, right? How do you know? And she said, I go to the communities that they operate. I see how the people who are in those communities feel about them, right? She said, every one of our board meetings, we insist that we rotate it. So I talk to the people in the community. What do you think, right? So this notion that being a good investment or being a long-term sustainable company is around corporate citizenship. It's how you develop the moral compass of an organization. And organizations with the right moral compass win. And they'll be here, again, in 50 years and 100 years and so on. So that's what I learned from these guys. And part of what I think we at Ethisphere have a responsibility to do is share it with you. So here's another thing that continues to speak to that moral compass of an organization. Intangibles have become the single most important factor in your company's value. So your brand. Here's a couple other data points for you. UBS and McKinsey have both done studies, and it says companies that are gender diverse outperform over ROE ROI, profits, stock performance over a 5-year period. Same story with additional diversity. So it's that diversity of people is creating a challenger culture. It's creating a place where people can raise their hand and their point of view is valued, right? But look at what the results are, right? And that's, again, not mostly dark, it's mostly light, right? So we feel good about that, and we feel amazingly good about the work you guys are doing. You're taking the leadership role here. So this is a slide that everybody likes to look at every year. So we took you guys, the 2016 list, and we ran it against the S&P. We've got a partner called IEX. For those of you who are going to the Global Ethics Summit, you'll see their CEO. Anybody here read the book Flash Boys? Okay, so his organization, IEX, did the analysis for us, and this is interesting. So once again, no matter what, there is an ethics or integrity premium out there. And again, if you think of all the money that's flowing into it, and if you think about why institutional investors decide to buy a stock or decide to sell a stock, this isn't going away. By the way, if anybody wants these slides, we're very happy to give them to you. So I told you in the beginning that part of our responsibility was to share what we've learned. So it's really interesting. Microsoft, General Electric, several other companies, Realogy, who's very creative, they're focusing on simplicity. They're making sure that their employees, their supply chains, they understand who they are, they understand their ethos. They're throwing out hours and hours and hours of training programs, right? And they're throwing out 20-page policies, and they're making it simple. So people can, and they're trusting their people. And people want to know from us, like, how do you engender organizational trust? The next one is incredibly important. Even the smallest challenges are an opportunity to develop your moral compass. There's some data that says less than 4% of reported issues actually come through a hotline. 86% of reported issues go to a supervisor or a manager, right? So what they're looking at is how you're acting. You as leaders, how you're acting. Use those challenges, so it doesn't have to be a hotel falling down, it doesn't have to be salmonella for 1,000 people. Use those challenges every day to demonstrate your moral compass. This is really important in a 24/7, 365 world. So I don't know what the figures are. Yesterday we announced our list. Last year, when we did it, we ended up with 10.1 Twitter impressions, I think in 24 hours, which was incredible, right? This year, my favorite couple tweets from Michael Dell, who looked very officious. So the people from Dell, Michael Dell looked very officious with a tie, and he didn't look like he was looking out of his dorm room at the University of Texas. He sent out a tweet to his zillions of followers, congratulations to the world's most ethical companies. That was one of my favorite. We do it in a lot of languages too, so Illy Cafe, the Italian coffee folks who are here, thank you. They did it, of course, in Italian, Iberdrola in Spanish, Cementos Progreso is here. So it's great stuff. But what's really interesting is in a 24/7, 365 world around communications, there's data that says companies who admit mistakes are trusted. That's how you gain trust. So allow for organizational humility and vulnerability in your businesses. Okay, allow for celebrate it, reward it. So Mass Mutual is here too. Their general counsel, Mark Rolig, is a brilliant guy. I said to him, how do you establish the culture of an organization? It's very simple, and the last point is the most important. It's who you hire, it's who you fire, who you reward, and who you promote. Do those 4 things right, okay? And that's how you set the culture of an organization. The other thing that so many folks are thinking about is how to create a challenger culture. We at Ethisphere are a carrot, not a stick organization, so I'm not going to stand up here and talk about, here's what happened at VW and here's what happened here. I'm not going to do that, but I will tell you the organizations that create a culture where people can raise their hand. And when I mean people, I mean suppliers, I mean partners, I mean when people can raise their hand, those are the organizations that are going to be here in 50 years or 100 years or 150 years. I'm firmly convinced about that. The more disclosure, the better. Right, Mark? It's the more disclosure, the better. Investors are looking for it. Employees are your most valuable asset. They're making a choice every day to join you or not, right? So you've got to be relentlessly transparent. And the final thing is interesting for people in this room. Voya does an interesting thing. I found out because I didn't even realize I had life insurance with them. They sent me a bill, and they had the WME logo on that bill. So they're making a statement to their customers that they believe in integrity, right? So all of you guys, get creative. Showcase your integrity premium. So anyway, that's really all I have to say. I hope we do a good job tonight. I'm done with the Dr. Seuss. Let me sketch out what we have. One of the favorite parts, I know Joe Sally from Milliken always likes this, is when you get to hear your company's name. So we've had a busy year at Ethisphere. We've been adding some great talent. A really smart journalist called Artie Maharaj has joined us as executive editor for digital content. She's very good at social media, and she's going to come up here in a second. And the world's most interesting Welshman, Ty Francis, has joined us as well. He's going to come up, and the two are going to sort of read out the names. Since it's our 10th year anniversary, I didn't want to make it about Ethisphere, but I wanted to make it a 10-year celebration of an integrity being, having a seat at the executive table and making a difference. Again, think about what institutional investors are looking at now. It's fascinating, and it ain't going away. So we're going to have a special, since this is our 10th year, we're going to have a special guest. Our founder is going to come up and share a couple words, Alex Brigham, and again, he's got a special guest with us. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Raul. And Raul, as you probably know, is blind. And he told me, he got really inspired when I told him about the work you're doing. And he said, you know, I'm writing a book. I said, wow, that's kind of interesting. And I want to tell them what this book's about, and I want to tell them how it matters to them. And again, Ambassador Munter, I think, is going to share some hopefully inspirational insights that you can take back. So the rest of the evening goes like this. So Ty, Francis, and Artie Maharaj are going to come up in a moment, and then they're going to be joined by a special guest. Ambassador Munter is going to share some insights with you. Then we're going to relax, no programs, just have dinner, let you connect with each other, and then Raul's going to come back up and tell us a little bit about his story and overcoming challenges and play some amazing music. And by the way, that wasn't a trumpet, that was his mouth. So I don't know if you guys caught that. You down here probably did, but it's amazing. So anyway, I hope, I always count on people like Gennaro and others. Tell me if we hit our goals of sharing, of inspiring, and more than anything, celebrating your great work. So with that, I'm going to ask Ty Francis and Artie Maharaj, come on up. So, thank you.